Hello, friends, a very warm welcome. And in this series of mains answer writing questions, again, we'll be focusing upon those key aspects and areas which you had been seeing that we have been consistently working upon so as to understand the process behind writing, how you can integrate facts, analysis, and also at the same time, you are able to bring your own understanding and personality on the paper. Because that is what examination requires. Questions are so often open ended that any person with a good general understanding will be able to write them. But I would say that that is not what is required. So going for the key ideas and understanding for the question number one, for effective corporate governance to take place in the coming years, why is it important to integrate ESG metrics with the multi-stakeholder approach? What benefits can be accrued by such integration? So ESG metrics is the key word over here. One has to understand that corporate governance, along with future oriented approach, which brings the idea of efficient, people centric, and at the same time sustainable future ahead. That is reflected by what one can say ESG metrics. So, relevance and effectiveness, upholding the principles of good governance, sustainable development goals, and timely achievement with rising role of private sector. One can mention even certain kind of SDG goal or even an example or illustration of a private sector impact as far as welfare sectors are concerned, or even any sector for that matter. Social justice and complement the public sector through PPP mode. For example, infrastructure creation like NHA BOT mode ensures last mile connectivity with beneficiaries. A very, very good example. Judicious utilization of resources like finance inputs and human resources. Inclusive growth upholding fairness and just quotient like EIA is a mandatory step that I agree. And benefits include competition, quality service, minimize costing, timely grievance, transparency. So the second part is much, much more smarter. And one thing answer could have been bringing in the starting was that what is the full form of ESG and how come India wants to, you know, bring it so quickly and efficiently. Good examples, but then there is a further scope, and uh, there could be a change in vocabulary also. Up it in the acts of corruption. The focus is often only on the demand side of the equation, on the public officials who abuse their office for private gain. Frequently, the supply side is given less attention. Those who pay bribes are sometimes depicted as innocent parties and victims of extortionary practices of willy public servants. That is what the public perception, or you can say societal behavior is. Do you agree that collusive corruption, in which there is a willing bribe giver, is a formidable challenge for institutions fighting corruption? This is very true because this has got a behavioral and a social approach. So giving bribe is ingrained in the behavior of a few. That is, I agree with the false belief that paisa dene se kaam banega. I agree with that. Very good start. And you must bring here that how it is linked with the developmental and colonial mindset. Since independence, India went on to create a democratic framework with democratic institutions, but still, the kind of legacy which was created by the British, that legacy was dismantled, and now we are more confident. And one can even write over here that colonial mindset is actually one of the reasons for bribe giving approach. One of the element that we say they are caught in trap of being less aware about the remedial measure. No, it is not about less aware. They look for quick. They want quick. I have the money, first of all, and secondly, I believe that money only will make the work. So it is obviously about awareness, but then the even they are not ready to be aware. They say it is a paper thing. It is on paper. It is their belief actually lies that everything is corrupt. So again, it is a big, big picture, political culture, bureaucratic culture, social culture. That is all need to be brought here. Willingly pay price as far as officer amongst the armed janta makes them vulnerable. Okay. However, collusive corruption is not a formidable challenge because no, it is a formidable challenge, but then it can be tackled. That's what one can say. It is a definitely formidable challenge. Even in the last 1 decade, government of India had been fighting and had been consistently working in that direction. So digitization to plug both demand and supply side of the corruption. That is Passport Seva app is an example. That is true. Digitization is one of the ways. Lokpal Act, civil servants and even Prime Minister under its jurisdiction, it has been actively working in different states in different parameters. Certain all states are not having the same kind of legislative framework as far as local act is concerned. More aware and active citizenry with the scale of adoption of social media. It is not about social media. Social media act as a tool where citizens are sensitized and they are encouraged to be a participant and to speak up. सो सोशल मीडिया सेंटर में नहीं आएगा, सेंटर में आएगा पीपल, सेंटर में आएगी पब्लिक, पब्लिक और जन, पब्लिक के साथ गवर्नमेंट. द कॉमन पीपल एंड वनरेबल सेक्शन स्टिल नीड टू बी covered by efforts like panchayat and municipalities DM to enable robust demographic area. So I think it's a well written area. It's a good area what you wrote, but then the answer actually is not reflecting the key words because the answer demands such understanding.
Yes. This is the question.
The Citizen Charter Initiative was a response to the quest for solving the problem which a citizen encountered in, day out, while dealing with organization providing public services. But the introduction and implementation of Citizen Charter in Government of India has been difficult due to old bureaucratic setup and rigid attitude of the workforce. Discuss major obstacles that have been encountered in implementing the Citizen Charter Initiative. So I think the question demands uh, understanding of the challenges and obstacles being faced. Let's go to the answer. Citizen Charter contains guiding principles for to meet good governance standards, transparency, accountability, fair and just delivery of services. One the wonderful start among all the answers. This is a very good start. Given it is not part of Given it is not part of the behavior and attitude of public officials, the intended of Citizen Charter have not been realized. Now again, we cannot completely, blame only the behavior and attitude of public officials. Behavior, you could have written the behavior and attitude of public officials is also shaped by societal behavior. They are also part of the whole social setup. They are changing social society, but they are being impacted by society also. And they are also being impacted by judicial and legislative, executive, all kind of scenarios around. So one of the major obstacles is it is it is foundational but not practical and hands-on approach, DIY approach of employees training and skilling. It is there on the paper, but the deep sensitization and the deep understanding of it is missing. It should be seen as preamble of the organization by constant and continuous endeavor, like banking's ombudsman famous hua, IREDA famous hua, SEBI famous hua. So the question arises, the transparency in the work structure and approach of PSUs and even institutions will make it so. Appropriate display on entry and inside and online. One can write even further better way that proper proper visibility or public display in different languages, like you said in the next one. Awareness of citizen about what, where, and how citizen charter. There must be a nodal counter. There must be a nodal counter, accessible nodal counter or accessible help desk. Timely revisit is relevant during board meeting. I think the answer is organic way answer is very well written. It needs to be more structured. It need to bring more practical point. For example, citizen charter must reflect the work environment. For example, banking citizen charter will be different. Citizen charter with respect to consumer rights is different. Citizen charter with respect to medical services is different. So every institutional framework requires a practical approach. So code of conduct is there, but then again, it is about how well it is implemented. You please focus on the implementation. You think that it is not that it is not there. Everybody will be having on the table also, but it will not be followed. For example, again, behavior. I can give you example that if you are not asking for many a times, you will not get the bill. It is written there. If bill is not given, then complain, or even the order is free, but still you will not get the bill. Now, what to do with that? Again, let's come back. The quality of public service delivery to a major is a major determinant of the quality of life of vulnerable section in the highly unequal society. Agreed. Divided along the lines of caste, class, and religion, in this background, do you think that public service delivery is efficient and sufficient enough to improve the lives of vulnerable groups in India? Critically examined. So the stand for this answer must be that yes, it is definitely changing their lives and it is moving ahead in the right direction, though a little bit more is to be done. One of the parameters, good start, transparency, point of sale, PDS, Aadhaar enabled, timely benefits, DP, direct benefit transfer, PM Kisan, wonderful, level playing field with one nation, one ration card, availability of basic amenities. It is not sufficient to improve their lives because the challenge of unemployment in seasonal too in agriculture, MG Narega, rising challenge of food inflation, falling real wages, 90% normalized lack of integrated data, education affordability, especially in secondary and higher shift to living wage. So here the kind of obstacles that you showcased, it is actually showcased in other areas. Couple of problems must have been highlighted within the same thing. For example, there are divergence. Secondly, sometimes uh, sometimes diversion is one point, and secondly, grievance redressal should have been the key point here. Like grievances, if they are not being handled well, then people become disillusioned. ऐसे ही चलता है, कुछ होता नहीं है. Like, for example, even for the civic services, if you are clicking a picture, putting up it on the portal, and even complaining it, then even the complainant is saying कि आप ऑफिस जाके बोलिए, जेई को बोलिए. So basically, there must be a kind of a deterrence which is missing. Deterrence is not there. The culture again. That is why ethics question demands कैसा culture है? कुछ भी चलेगा क्या? So good officers, good public representatives, and timely and duly understanding of the laws and following them. तब हो पाएगा. So that is one element we can bring it. The wise man does not lay up his own treasures. The more he gives to others, the more he has for his own. Okay. The wise man may not be the most richest and will not strive to be so. Treasures here means knowledge and experience over time. The more it is shared and spread, the more person it gains. For example, Bhakti Sense, wonderful example. And you could have written one line more on Bhakti Sense. So the selfish attitude of an individual, like life of mother, teaches us forgiveness, discipline, and hard work. More than that, a mother's life is teaching us to dedicate herself without any selfish interest. Working of self-help groups, majority based on giving, which develops a large network that becomes self-sustaining and progressive. NGOs always contribute for society's welfare, working on the principles of inclusive growth in an equitable way. Nandi Foundation enable global empowerment tribal coffee growers. Araku Valley, I think wonderful examples. On track, fresh, moving ahead, but the vocabulary and also structural approach is emerging. However, it is also not the case. No, poor people are actually the nation builders who work in the most challenging circumstances. They suffer the most. Their due share still remain pending. I think good enough, good question, good confidence shown. But then again, you could have, for example, written Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. You could have written, matlab, you all the names cannot be written. The question was saying that the because the more they give, the more इट हैज फॉर इट्स ओन. तो आप सोसाइटी कुछ भी ऐसा एक पैराग्राफ या दो लाइनें हो सकती थी. फॉर एग्जाम्पल as I just named directly came to my mind. But otherwise, it's very good. I think a lot of questions and ideas are reflected in the answer. Again, let's go into ESG metrics. Ethical values are enshrined in the corporate governance. So again, focuses on ethical values, shareholder approach, accountability, transparency like SEBI, societal welfareism, CSR, consumer rights, you know, that is the Consumer Protection Act 2019. So it is far more clearer and far more documented answer. Integration and multi-stakeholder approach, making objective more inclusive regarding social goals, diversity, equity, and inclusivity. I think wonderfully written. Very good example. That is Transgender Act 2019 in employment. Achieving climate governance by adopting sustainable methods. For example, Panchamrit Target 2070. Transparency in working of governance system, whether price discovery, for example, role of independent directors. I think good examples, trustee model where the vision of uh, corporate aligns with the shareholders in society, stakeholders in society, CSR, finding in education and health, funding in education and health. So the analytical part of the answer is being correlated with the illustration. So that means illustration is first coming to mind, and then you are actually creating a reverse engineering kind of thing, and then suddenly point are coming. Benefits, easier mobilization of resources, financial, for example, a green bond, augmenting brand value, for example, green budgeting, compassionate capitalism. That's a wonderful point. Becoming a role player in societal goal, reducing carbon footprint. So I think very, very objective, very broad, and suddenly the answer that we were reading previously, as I just said, those answers are actually organic. The structure must be there along with that. So again, it has to be fit with a lot of other examples and illustration. Coming back to the corruption question and idea of the demand side and those who are paying bribes. Let's see, corruption is both coercive and coercive. Bribe demand, voluntary bribe giver. Both are evil for society. So it feeds the wheel of immoral act. So this is half mark. Half mark will be given for this. Coercive corruption is highlighted more in media, but collusive corruption is more huge and systematic than coercive corruption. So clearly, the answer is able to distinguish between the two. Collusive corruption includes stakeholder, public, bureaucratic, political nexus. It is a formidable challenge. So precedent of corruption taken as normal day-to-day life, as I just said, real estate mafia, erodes the moral fabric of the institution. For example, which Raj? Not able to read. जंगल राज तो नहीं है यार. Hmm. Anyways, creates exorbitant cost on public exchequer and public for rooting out corruption. I agree. Threaten the whistleblower's life as a whole mechanism is involved is also a wonderful point, like mining lease issue in Chhattisgarh. Corruption seen as a way of life, having integrity, harming the integrity of institution. Therefore, steps should be taken. Bribe giver is equal to bribe taker. Both are guilty. Uh, One should say that among public on BNS, BSS, awareness should be there on the new laws, citizen charter updation, anonymity and transparency, Vivad se Vishwas scheme. So I think again, a very analytical, detached and a practical approach is required. So it is being reflected here. Citizen charter, major obstacles that what we were discussing. So citizen charter is a simple process of identifying, maintaining initiative and service in a readable layman's language to public. Again, it is being bifurcated. Citizen charter, do's and don'ts, dashboard, process, steps to follow for problem solving or service delivery, public grievance system, and know your officer. I think again, it is more approach is more broader, approach is more clearer. This ensures transparency in working, making the government more accountable in nature. However, major obstacles is not formulating citizen charter in layman's local language. For that, AI Bhashini app for translation, regular update of new service requires capacity building of the staff. Both the points are appreciated. Armchair bureaucracy needs sensitization. Public needs ACR, midterm career counseling. Public feedback grievances method and process need to be strengthened by the feedback box. I agree again that auditing of government building accountability and accessibility is needed so that proactiveness in behavior is there. Public education awareness regarding uh, the citizen charter among citizens via newspaper or you can say social media. Again, the ethical and the philosophical and the practical approaches being reflected. Certain points we had discussed in the first part, first answer. Now we had seen in the second one also. So quality of service delivery is a matter, is a very important determinant, especially with respect to vulnerable sections that we discussed, and it is an highly unequal society. So we have to critically examine this. Public service delivery system achieves the idea of welfareism, socio-economic justice. For example, PDS accessible है, nutritional है, quality है. RT also another example, affordable है, quality है, universal है. So quality is important because that is what the question is also demanding. Successful or not, it will be decided by that. Substandard midday meal like salt and roti hampers the progress of vulnerable section of society. So one can be, one must be doing is bringing practical and relatable examples from the newspaper or whatever had been popular in the news and bringing it in a short form. 80 to 90, like government, vulnerable section of society. That's what we said. So again, welfareism in India, 450 million people have only one day meal, whereas literacy is only about 70 to 80%. Thus, the status of public service delivery is not adequate enough to reach 85, reach 5 trillion economy. That's what we are aiming for, $5 trillion economy, or at least middle income nation. It's still a challenge. Corruption eroding the scheme, ineffective use of public funds, quantity versus quality debate, centralization of welfareism creates mismatch in federal structure schemes. So point number 4 is a little different, bureaucratic attitude. Following must be done: digitization, social auditing, and then rationalization and incorporation of civil society NGO. So again, a broad approach is being reflected. So it's a work in the right direction. Wiseman does not lay up his own treasures. The more he gives to others. The question says that actually what one is an expert in, one is giving, he is happily giving it, and that should be an attitude in public services also, because that is how you will get much more back. So by giving, one receives more. This is true for an individual as well as for a nation. Selfless without reciprocation, sticking to satyagraha ideas. So, for example, neighborhood first policy that we have been following in spite of tough neighborhood. Moral persuasion of society is also reflected, leading from the front. For example, India during COVID-19 vaccine मैत्री हमने किया, and then global recognition, and also we were able to create a kind of a understanding and also ability by India to lead in such difficult times. Indian Medical Council also played important role, and Indian medical industry became self-reliant and export-oriented. The cost of medicine also got down. So Western countries acting in the form of hoarding and restricting supplies, ऐसा किया था बिल्कुल उन्होंने. The cost of medicine and erosion of goodwill of capitalism was to be seen to be taken. So the structure and style here is taking up one example only and explaining it in very detail. There can be a different style also, as we had seen previously. Similarly, in the case of happiness and wisdom, if one share with others, they can increase it for oneself also. More one or she restricts himself or herself, then the problem arises. One's become inward looking. So that is why increase the R&D capacity. Indian government have embarked upon one nation, one subscription, scientific research material. So this is also a very good example. Now let's coming back to the final set. Corporate ethics advocates the Trinitarian welfare model, effective environmental, social governance norms fulfilling the spirits of equity and sustainability. So again, keywords are visible. I said in the beginning also. So integrating is taking a balanced approach, triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. So you also said in the beginning, and second answer was also talking about it, but this is in a little different and simple way. Ethical corporate culture, maximum of reciprocity, moral obligation, prevailing ethical standards, transparent governance, sustainable development to fulfill the demands of Paris Agreement, productivity by inclusion. McKinsey reports note that diversity in organization improve the productivity by 30%. So benefits are environmental sustainable development, environmental consciousness. So consumer, they will be detesting high fashion brand for greenwashing. Preservation of flora and fauna, limit climate change, social inclusive development, minimize inequality and relevance of justice. For example, Niyamgiri Hills, this is an example. So again, a division is there and then a micro division is there. So improving the work culture, transparency and accountability with SEBI mandating business and sustainability reporting, India is moving towards an important ethical governance. Again, coming back to the question on corruption, because the demand side and the giver side. So this answer starts by bringing the idea that what corruption is, and the World Bank definition is given: misuse of public office for personal gain, but ignore the supply side. So those who are willingly collude do not speak out in corruption. Yes, collusive corruption is formidable. Why? Cartelization, good word, concentration of power, collusion of elites. So Vora committee said capitalist politician bureaucracy. So again, presentation must be appreciated. Collusive corruption leads to coercive corruption, whereas innocents and middle and poor people are sufferers. They are forced to pay bribe. Ba- banality of evil. Like Hannah Arendt, she is a very very important thinker, philosopher, political scientist, and gets established as corruption as a culture. It gets accepted and normalized, as I just said over there. Economic implications are there. Inflation होता है, decreasing purchasing power parity आता है, and then lack of accountability because corrupt elites get away with misusing loopholes in the laws. For example, Nirav Modi. So ways क्या है? Digital tools, ethical training, incentives. For example, Tata strengthening bodies like CAG and Lokayuk, community participation. Hence, Kaushik Basu warns against Sanskritization of corruption. The supply side of it must also be addressed. So this is answer is bigger. Answer is bringing more revenues, and it is bringing a more awareness in the same thing. Citizen Charter, we discussed that also. Citizen Charter is talking about, like, Citizen Charter pioneered in 1990s by John Major, effective administrative tool. So it went on to bring its background. Bedrock is transparency, public service delivery, and accountability. So what is the aim? Aim we had also discussed, but then it is a better way of presentation because you are bringing so many elements at one point. Responsive, accountability, transparency, public service delivery, grievance redressal. So I think this is a better way. But since it is not fulfilled, why? Because of because as sociologist Merton says, bureaucracy has become ritualist, emphasizing on the means but not on the ends, or it has become a kind of a process but not a kind of a result. So adopted in letter but not in spirit. You also see the same thing. Lack of effective monitoring and constant review is not there. I mean, it must be done. General public must be involved. Local language, we already said. Re-engineering process, we said. Lack of effective grievance redressal is there. Means redressal must be the non-inclusion of civil society. These are the obstacles because the question is asking obstacles. Second ARC emphasizes it. So again, a better way to put up in the time frame. Anybody can write these, but not in the time frame. That's the whole issue. Quality of public service delivery, quality of life of vulnerable sections, and especially, is it sufficient and enough? So Gandhiji's talisman can be used to understand and to also extend the case of public service delivery and judge its effectiveness. Poorest of the poor. So I think good start as far as ethics is concerned. Focuses on means, for example, GS means utilitarianism. Ethics is not followed where goals are not at the core of public delivery, but रूल्स आर, मतलब राशन भेजना है, खाया चूहे ने खाया, लोगों ने खाया, क्या बीमारी हुई, इससे कोई लेने देना नहीं. क्वालिटी भी फोकस होना चाहिए. Lack of last mile delivery, we already discussed that. Multidimensional poverty is there for Indians. Lack of right beneficiary selection, 22% of ration cards in Chhattisgarh found to be bogus. Lack of social auditing, this is a very good point. Community participation must be there. So answer is very light. Second part was light. First was less light. So this is the maximum. If I say maximum clarity is there. Culture and tradition like caste system, gender discrimination, religious bias is there. It is also hampering the effectiveness. But the public sector delivery has achievements also. Like the we also mentioned in our answers before mentioning the obstacles. We were also talking about what is good. Reduction in IMR, there is infant and child mortality. Indians under PDS schemes like MG Narega, urban poverty is also declining. Swanidhi and NULM, tribal integrated to mainstream PM Mandhan Yojana, Eklavya Yojana. As Atal Bihari Vajpayee knows, the success of government is not in economic growth but in the effective governance and public service delivery. This can be attributed not to just Atal Bihari Vajpayee, sir, but to other leaders also. Now, coming back to the quote, which can be understood and can be written in so many ways. So, imbibing the age old jargon of sharing is caring. So, again, the officer is trying to bring another element of the same thing: selflessness, compassion, and helpful. Story of India emerging as big brother with policies like Sagar, neighborhood first. I already said that through Operation Kaveri, Operation Maitri, DPSP Article 39B, SDG Goal 10. It is emphasizing on the arresting the concentration of wealth and utilize for common good. In economic sphere, idea of socialism and in extreme form communism by Marx highlighted equitable distribution of property and resources for common good. Corporates through ethical capitalism, CSR activities, Indian Oil का example दिया, Parivartan for jail reforms, Wipro, that is Sunhera Kal by ITC, they are the testaments. Prevalence of environmental ethics can be seen by community ownership among the Northeast tribals or even the Bishnoi community, we would say, triumphing the cause of national sustainable development. In the words of pop culture idol John Lennon, imagine all the people having all the world. You can call me a dreamer, but I am not the only one. So that's how you have to enjoy and you have to bring your own learning. Don't no need to bring John Lennon, but you can bring Premchand, you can bring Lata Mangeshkar, you can bring anything, whatever you like, but it has to be very structured and there must be an approach over here. So now you can share your couple of critical inputs and ideas.
So the most fundamental thing is having clarity while we are writing, so that we are able to write in a more lighter way as we are focusing through different tasks like newspaper discussions. So
Mhm.
that change would reflect in answer writing also.
Correct. And as I just said, the answers are organic in nature, so you are also able to understand and bring it, but then that nailing it clearly, putting it in the finishing touches, bringing
जी.
more idea that, so let's continue that process. You can revisit the whole exercise. It is a very important training module. So going to bring lot of richness and comprehensive understanding when one do it with lot of honesty, integrity, and efficiency. It's not for you, for everyone else also, the template remains the same. Thank you very much.